Well, Kellie Carter-Jackson is an assistant professor of the humanities in the Department of Africana Studies at Wellesley College. She joins us live via Skype from Boston. Madam, thank you for joining us. Now, we heard a very strong statement there by Duante Wright's aunt. I will ask you about that later. I'd just like to start with the Chauvin trial, if that's okay. We have, of course, found out today that Derek Chauvin is not going to testify. I guess your reaction to that, and I suppose, would you have wanted to see him take the stand?
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that he chose to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. I don't think that there's much that he could say. I think that if he were to speak, he would be likely to incriminate himself. And I don't think that people were wanting to hear from him as well. One of the things I found so interesting about this case is that I've been watching his body language, his posture. Nothing about him seems to have a lot of anxiety or even expressions of remorse. And so I don't know that he would have proved, a case in his advantage had he taken the stand.
And of course, what's left on Monday now are the closing statements, and then the jury will retire. What have you made of the case of both the prosecution and the defense so far?
Wow. I mean, this has been one of the hardest trials to watch. Some of the testimony has just been so heart-wrenching. I think the prosecution has done, a superb job at really showing all of the different witnesses and factors that went into George Floyd's death, and really showing that it was this knee to the neck that killed George Floyd. I think the defense tried to, persuasively argue against that. And I think that with each witness they brought up, I had a hard time trying to see their rationale as one that felt very accurate or factual. It felt like all they needed to do was cast doubt, but I felt the prosecution was so successful in giving fact after fact after fact. But it remains to be seen. We've seen a lot of cases that look like they could be so closed and shut. And I'm still not sure about what the outcome of this case will be, despite the fact that the prosecution did such a strong job.
Yeah, because, of course, if a single jury member has any kind of reasonable doubt that it was just the knee on George Floyd's neck that caused his death, of course, that would mean that certainly there wouldn't be the higher charges for murder. Let's talk about the other case that we mentioned just before coming to you, and that's Duante Wright, a young man who was shot not very far away from that courthouse in Minneapolis. I mean, it's such a awful coincidence that while the eyes of the world are focusing on Minneapolis, this happens. What does it do to the Chauvin trial? This sort of attention, this case happening so close, does it make it even more symbolic?
I think it puts people even more on edge. I think people's anxiety and grief about, these killings have been, elevated to a point where people are not sure what to do with their rage, their anger, their emotions. Listening, to the footage of his aunt, you hear the pain, you hear the grief. And it's just so hard to reconcile how this could happen, not just geographically so close together, but time-wise. This is less than a year since George Floyd's death, and here we are again. I think there's so many lessons we need to learn if we're going to keep these instances from happening.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear the closing arguments and then, of course, see how long the jury deliberates for. It could be a long time. For the moment, Kellie Carter-Jackson, assistant professor of the humanities in the Department of Africana Studies at Wellesley College. Madam, thank you.
Thank you.